Welcome to the Critic and the Pleb. I'm Ben, I'm the critic.
And I'm Caitlin, I'm the plebe. This is a podcast where we take turns choosing movies to offer our different perspectives and to hopefully entertain and or inform you all.
A brief warning. This podcast may contain adult content and will definitely contain spoilers. If you haven't seen the film in the episode title and don't want anything given away, please go see the film first and come back later to listen.
I'm Rick Dalton. It's my pleasure, Mr. Schwartz.
Call me Marvin. Put it there. That your son?
No, it's my stunt double, Cliff Booth.
Last night, we watched a Rick Dalton double feature. All the shooting. I love that stuff, you know, the killing.
A lot of killing.
Anybody order fried sauerkraut? Crown you Nazi bastards!
Seems this world got you down. You're feeling bad vibrations.
Are you an actor?
No, I'm a stuntman.
Girl, look at me.
So you still with Rick, huh? Still here.
You can do anything you want to him.
We're gonna have a flame.
I hired you to be an actor, Rick, not a TV cowboy. You're better than that.
Line?
Embarrass yourself like that in front of all those goddamn people.
Welcome to the Critic and the Plebe. Today, we Valiant Pitbulls are discussing my latest critic pick, Quentin Tarantino's 9th motion picture, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Al Pacino, and many, many others. Just a reminder, there will be spoilers on this podcast, so again, if you have not seen this one and you don't want anything given away, please go see it, come back and listen, because this will be spoiler heavy.
The Letterboxd plot overview says that a faded television actor and his stunt double strive to achieve fame and success in the film industry during the final years of Hollywood's golden age in 1969 Los Angeles. And why did you pick this one, Ben?
Well, like many people my age, our age, and Gen Xers before us, Quentin Tarantino is almost like a part of my bones as far as movie going goes and as far as being a film buff goes. You know, everybody has seen a Quentin Tarantino movie. Everybody knows the brand of Quentin Tarantino, even if you're not super into movies. But for me, Quentin Tarantino was one of those directors who definitely opened up the world of, you know, quote unquote cinema to me and helped me realize that there was more to movies than just a few yucks here and a plot and it's over and done with, that there was actually some stuff going on behind the scenes and everything. So I'm always excited for a new Quentin Tarantino movie. I've been looking forward to this one since he announced the trickling of an idea somewhere back in 2017, that he was writing something about the Manson family. So I've been excited for a while, just for the fact that it's Quentin Tarantino. And you were willing to come along because of Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously.
Well, I enjoy Tarantino's movies. Honestly, even as a lowly plebe, this would be one that I would still want to see. But yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio seals the deal for me.
And we were talking about that before, not about Leo, but we were talking about, well, even Leo still is kind of impressive too in his way. But we were talking before we went in about Quentin Tarantino being a brand name director. He's one of the few directors nowadays that people know, people recognize that they will go to a movie by virtue of it being his movie. There aren't many directors like that out now. There's pretty much Marvel and, you know, crappy, mediocre Disney live-action remakes, and there's not much else.
I feel like Wes Anderson has a following.
But I'm talking, like, yeah, I know that there's art house directors, obviously. But Wes Anderson's still pretty relegated to the art house.
Think so?
Yeah.
I feel like he's at least more familiar. I mean, when I talk with other plebes, that's at least a name that other people recognize.
Well, yeah, people recognize him, but I'm saying, like, is he going to top the box office? No, he's not. He doesn't have a chance, really. He's more of like, he'll get some sleeper hits, but I'm talking directors that pull in people on the opening weekend. You got Tarantino, you got Jordan Peele. Who else?
Scorsese?
No, not really
No?
anymore. I mean, his last one was Silence, and it depends, because Scorsese's one of those that alternates, and he's venerated. It's not quite the same, though. Like, people generally don't know Scorsese so much. Like, non-film buffy people aren't necessarily going to see, oh, I need to see this because it's the new Scorsese movie. Because I guess Scorsese's always also somebody who tries so many different things with his movies. Like, not everything that he makes is a Goodfellas. So not everybody is going to flock to it. You know, the same people who like Goodfellas aren't necessarily going to love Silence about Jesuit monks in Japan in the 18th century. But either way, it's really special that, and I was excited to see it because, again, it's nice to see Quentin Tarantino, who puts out original screenplays in the midst of all this. You know, I don't mind superhero stuff, but I really am not liking the Disney live-action remakes that are coming out because they're just so derivative and so unnecessary that I was just excited to see something original come into the theater. And there has been a fair amount of that this year, you know, because Jordan Peele had a movie and that made a lot of money, and that was nice that something original is making money. But Leo, you know, he's one of the last movie stars, wouldn't you say?
Yes. And I love Leo. I'm a big Leo fan. He's
Yeah.
amazing.
Get this, woman in mid-20s who grew up with Titanic loves Leonardo DiCaprio. We got a hot take over here from
He's
Caitlin
amazing.
here.
He's definitely one of my top 5 favorite actors.
He definitely wouldn't crack the top 5 for me. I mean, I tend to like more character-type actors anyway. But I'd say this might be, and we'll get into the performances, but this is certainly, it's got to be in the top 3 Leo performances for me that I've seen.
I think all of his performances are perfect 100s, and you can't possibly rank them because they're all perfect.
His best one's Wolf of Wall Street still, though, in my opinion. But that's a discussion for a whole other time. So what were your expectations going to this? I certainly had my expectations. I'll parse them out a little bit, but I'm curious what yours were.
I always enjoy Tarantino movies, but I'm also always a little bit wary going into a Tarantino movie because they can be pretty, for lack of a better term, gory. So I kind of like steeled myself for that going in. And honestly, when we were walking out of the theater, we both kind of said that wasn't what we expected. And I'm glad it wasn't what I expected. I felt a lot better walking out of this movie than, and I still really like and respect all of Tarantino's other works, but I really liked this one. I felt comfortable coming out. So expectations, I figured it would be a good movie, but I would be uncomfortable. And I wasn't necessarily uncomfortable.
Interesting. And I would agree with you there in that my expectations were certainly, you know, I'm not going to say not met. Like, saying that it didn't meet my expectations isn't quite the same thing. It appended my expectations, like Tarantino always does to an extent. You know, he always has his brand. He always has his sensibility that's in there, no matter what he's doing. But he always finds some way to twist what you're expecting to get. You know, you're definitely getting your favorite dish at this restaurant, but it's like the mashed potatoes are purple all of a sudden. And it still pretty much is the same thing, but hey, that's purple. Did not see that coming.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
And that's what I got. That's what I get with most Tarantino ones, but especially with this one. I was afraid of. I was excited for this, but I was also nervous about it. I was telling you about things that I was nervous about going in. I was nervous because I wasn't sure. I was worried about the post-Weinstein aspect of Tarantino's past few years, because all of Tarantino's movies before this, or everything but Reservoir Dogs, I believe, was produced by Harvey Weinstein. And obviously that's tricky now, given his horrific actions and all the terrible, terrible, horrible things that he did to women. And Tarantino put out a statement a few months after all of that surfaced back in, what was it, late 2016, early 2017, or late 2017, I think. But he put out a statement saying, and I thought it was an honest statement. I thought it was the best statement he could have possibly given. And that's not even me being a fanboy. I just think that it was the best statement he could have given, in that He said that I knew more. I didn't do enough for what I knew because I definitely heard some things, but I brushed them off. And he didn't make any excuses saying like everybody was brushing him off, so I'm fine. He said I heard some things, but I brushed them off. I didn't really think anything. I didn't think enough of it, and I should have done something, but I didn't, and I regret that. So I mean, and this is like white guy saying that, so I'm coming from that perspective, but I thought that was as honest as it could be. What do you think about that?
I mean, in the Me Too era, when allegations arise, I think it's really important for people to say things like that, like, I knew what was going on and I didn't do all that I could. Being sincere about it and apologizing and kind of saying, I'm going to try and be better about that from now on, I think is the best thing that men can do in that situation, because if you get defensive and if you start blaming the victims or if you start saying that other people were just as bad, that does nothing to improve things. So I do appreciate that he admitted his mistake. I think, like you said, that's probably the best thing that he could have done.
Yeah, it's the only thing. And again, just getting out, I mean, not getting out in front of it, because obviously it was behind it, but it was just transparent, honest. What I was worried about is that either he would completely skate past Weinstein-esque stuff in his new movie and not address it at all, and even revert back to a more juvenile version of himself that he had in like definitely his first movie, Reservoir Dogs. I thought that he'd kind of go way back to basics and just try to get back on being the Tarantino that people really like and people think about when they associate the brand name with him. Or I thought that he was going to do something super heavy-handed and like a Me Too message, but set back in 1969, and I thought that it was just going to be like really blowing it over the head, like to the point of maybe like Inglourious Bastardsing like a pervy movie producer in 1969. And I thought, well, yeah, sure, that would have been cool, that would have been cathartic, would have been like a little much. So, and what we have, I'm not even sure if it's maybe a little, but maybe not. I mean, I'm thinking...
I didn't even get any vibes addressing that topic. Honestly, it didn't seem to go that way at all for me.
No, not really. The only thing that comes close is the revelation that we get about 40 minutes in about the Brad Pitt character. Maybe. But even that is a little outside baseball, I suppose. But
yeah, that felt more like character development to me than like a statement on the treatment of women.
Yeah, very true. And I guess that just gets into the characters in general you want to talk about.
I just appreciated the cast of characters. Like, I really enjoyed all of them. None of them were perfect human beings by any means. They all had their flaws, but I really enjoyed getting to know them. I felt like they each had kind of like a quote-unquote backstory that they delved into, which made them feel very real, very whole, and I sympathized and empathized with a lot of the characters a lot. Like, there's one scene where Leo's character is talking with a young actress who's in the same show with him, and he basically is breaking down when he's telling her about a book he's reading where the main character is kind of like washed up and a has-been, and he's just like sitting there crying, and this sweet little girl is like consoling him, and I felt so bad for him in that moment. Like,
yeah.
I really felt for the characters. And Brad Pitt's character too. I mean, by no means a perfect human.
Well, that we even know of, as far as our information
Yeah.
that we get about him. Because, I mean, for those who have seen it, again, spoilers on this podcast. If you have not seen it, please go see it. But I'm assuming that if you're this far, you've seen it. But with the Brad Pitt character, I mean, we get that revelation that Cliff Booth killed his wife, apparently.
It definitely seems like it in a flashback that we get.
It seems like it.
They set it up to look like he killed his wife with a fishing spear, which wouldn't exactly be
Subtle.
subtle.
Yeah.
She wasn't a very nice lady, we see in that clip, which obviously wouldn't excuse killing her.
No, definitely not. But at the same time, it's just interesting how it's placed, because I had the same sort of thing with Sam Rockwell in 3 Billboards. Everybody, there's a similar thing, like with Sam Rockwell's character in 3 Billboards as this racist sheriff in a small town. And there was this whole hubbub during the Oscar season of 2017, early 2018, of, oh, there's backlash because Sam Rockwell's character is racist and he tortured black people in the town. But there's no confirmation of that in the movie at all. It's all hearsay. It could just be a small town rumor. And yeah, was he a racist dude? Yeah, he definitely had some issues. He definitely was not a perfect character either. However, we as an audience don't have any true evidence of that. We're just hearing all these rumors and gossip around him. So I never bought that, as far as he definitely for sure tortured black people in 3 Billboards. Same goes for Brad Pitt here. When we see that flashback, we are already shaded with the perceptions of the people around him. We're shaded with the rumors and the gossip of, oh, well, he killed his wife. Even though, and then by the time we see the flashback, especially how it ends with him possibly angling the harpoon gun near her, you know, the coloring book's already been done for us by the other characters. So it's kind of a Rashomon type thing.
Right. His character strikes me as one of those characters that he has his kind of own moral compass. And for the most part, it points north. Like, he's doing things for reasons that he believes is right, and he stands up for people when he believes it's right. Like, when he goes to the Charlie Manson area, like a ranch kind of thing?
The Spawn Ranch.
Yeah, the ranch.
Yep.
He makes very sure that he can check up on the old guy that he knows owns that property, even though his life is in danger. He is very clear about wanting to make sure that this man is safe and not being taken advantage of, which is nice. He's very protective of his best friend.
Which is a great scene, by the way. The suspense is insanely well done.
It was very creepy, and I think the atmosphere there was done really well.
Oh my god, like it. And Quentin Tarantino, one of his favorite, he has so many favorite movies, but one of his favorite movies is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974. And he was cribbing shots from that, like, not ripping them off, but that was definitely his touchstone during that scene, especially the closer he gets into the house. And that was just very, very well done.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as he's leaving the ranch, one of the dudes there had knifed one of his tires, so the tire was deflated, and his response was to beat the guy up and be like, you did this to my car, you fix it.
Which is interesting too, because it's like we see that flash of violence, but at the same time, like you were saying, he's got the code, he's got a line.
It feels warranted somehow. Like, obviously I would never encourage anyone to do that, but for his character, for some reason, I was like, that works.
Well, and plus just
you can tell there's like weirdness going on there, so he probably feels more willing to be a little bit more forceful.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It gave nice deepness to the characters.
Yeah, depth, one could say.
Depth, one could say. One could say depth.
One could say depth, and that would mean that they're
but
actually
perhaps
speaking,
deepness is...
they're actually speaking the language, but no, I really love Brad Pitt's character. I mean, I really loved a lot of the characters here, but Brad Pitt's character is just, we get a lot of him silent too. We get a lot of him just contemplating, thinking. It's very subtly expressive, his performance. And I just love how he's a great friend to Leonardo DiCaprio. I just love their relationship. Mm-hmm. Because you learn that, because for the first half hour before we get the revelation that everybody ostracizes Brad Pitt because he may or may not have killed his wife, I thought, like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio is a dick. Like, what is Brad Pitt getting out of this relationship at all? Like, what is this? But when you see how everybody treats Brad Pitt, or Cliff Booth, we see that, well, Rick Dalton is very generous and is trying to, hang him on. And there is give and take there. And I thought that was just really beautifully revealed. Like, that was as much of a thrill as some of the more genre thrills were in Tarantino's past 3 movies. Was just those little relationship revelations and character beats. But we should dive into DiCaprio's character a little bit more.
Yeah,
Rick Dalton.
He smokes too much. He drinks too much.
Mm-hmm. Gains 15 pounds in Italy.
He gains 15 pounds in Italy because he loves the food so much. I mean, can't blame him.
I think we all would.
I think we all would, honestly. But he seems like a decent guy. I mean, he's an actor who's been doing westerns, it seems like, most of his life. He was in
Western
this show.
TV series.
Yeah, the show called Bounty Hunter, and he kind of always plays the bad guy, it seems
Bounty
like.
Law.
Like the anti-hero or the villain or something, but he's good at that. And
Well, he played the hero in Bounty Law, and that was when he was a lead, but he's been relegated in this part of the career where we see him in the late 60s into being the heavy, into being the bad guy. And he's
Sure.
not dealing with that transition very well at first.
right, because he feels like his career is over. And I mean, again, I really empathize with his character. I think the scene with the girl is really sweet, and I think the scenes where they're actually acting out the TV show or the
Yeah.
movie, I'm not clear on what it was.
I think it was a pilot.
A pilot?
I'm pretty sure it was a pilot. That's what
I
it
thought it
seemed
was a
like
movie,
the
but I don't
most.
know. But when they're shooting that, it was really cool just like seeing those moments where he like forgets his line, and
Yeah.
when he is like beating himself up in his trailer like after the morning of the shoot where he forgot a bunch of lines, he's really mad at himself. And then the afternoon shoot where he like slays it and does amazing, and it's like
And that's just so satisfying.
it's so moving because he's like everyone's telling him he did such an amazing job, and he tears up
And he did
because
do
he
an
feels
amazing job.
proud. He did. That was really good.
like there's an arc there, and it's beautiful to behold. And
And I think I just want to like point out how awesome it is that Leo can play an actor within an actor so perfectly. Like I felt like I was watching a different movie during those scenes.
Yeah, it is impressive, definitely. And there's so many things I want to say about him. I guess I want to pop back into one. I'll be a film nerd and say that the takes and whatnot, and the going back and showing him mess up the takes and everything. That was very. It reminded me of some Jean-Luc Godard stuff. This French director that's a big influence on Tarantino. And I hadn't seen a lot of Godard things since his first couple of movies, but it was nice to see some of that influence come back with that experimental, show how the sausage gets made with cinema kind of a thing. And there was just that hint of that sprinkled in there, which was interesting. But with the character of Rick Dalton in general, like you're saying, it's touching to see his arc, and it's not that, and he thinks that his career is ending, but it's really just changing. And that's another big development that he gets throughout. That's kind of his character development throughout this. Is he going to have a show like Bounty Law again? No. Should he beat himself up for every mistake that he has? Because those are haunting him too, and he's trying to drown those out with a lot of his excessiveness. Because he's mad that he didn't get the Great Escape part that Steve McQueen has. He beats himself up constantly for trying to star in some movies, and then that got Bounty Law canceled. So he is haunted by his mistakes in his career. He's haunted by these missed opportunities. He thinks that the possibility of going to Italy to star in Italian westerns is going to be just hell. But again, that's just seeing him realize throughout, just become steadily more used to, well, it's not ending, it's just changing and evolving. That's just really rich. And I can personally really relate to that too, which is nice.
It was a cool journey.
And like I was saying, this has got to be a top 3 Leo performance for me. I'm not sure if it beats Wolf of Wall Street. Is still top for me, for him. But this is very strong, and honestly, I think that he's getting just better and better as an actor.
I fully maintain
In
that
this
Leo has
decade.
never done anything wrong in his life.
He hasn't done anything. He hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't done anything wrong. But some of the stuff can get a little samey.
Nah.
Some of the stuff can be pretty samey if you look at the bulk of his performances.
Same in the fact that it's all perfection. Yeah.
I mean, it's all good. I just don't know if there's quite as much range there throughout a lot of his.
To that I say, pfft.
Whatever you say.
Leo's a genius.
In this, he does a very, very, very good job. And as does Brad Pitt. What other performances do we have that are... I mean, the rest of the cast is really just sort of an ensemble. I suppose the biggest part that we should probably touch on is Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate.
And even though she doesn't show up much in the movie, and she really doesn't say much. Like, she doesn't really have a lot of actual lines. The scene where she goes and kind of watches her own movie in the theater, and just the scenes where she's moving around, you get a pretty full picture of her life and who she is as a person.
Yeah, she is a
and I liked that.
She is a presence in this film. And there was that whole thing a month ago or so with an interview. Did you see this with the interviewer? There's an interviewer who asked Tarantino just saying, like, why didn't you give her enough lines in the movie? And it's like, and he basically shut her down. He reacted a little angrily, and he reacted that way. He's reacted that way before, earlier in his career, when journalists ask him about violence in his movies, where he says, like, violence is fun, Jan. And there's like a clip of that plays, and he says that, and that's just funny. And it's also true, because it's just like, come on. And this, I haven't watched the clip in a little bit, and I'd like to watch it in light of this, but I'm inclined to agree with his reaction to this interviewer of just, well, that's not really the point here, And again, she still does have a presence. This is a visual medium. She doesn't need a ton of lines, especially for a movie like this where there are a ton of silent moments. This might have, don't quote me on it, but this might have the least dialogue. There are long stretches without a lot of dialogue for a lot of characters compared to other Tarantino movies, which seem to be a lot more talky.
And I almost thought there were too many silent moments for, like, when I immediately left. Now I'm kind of thinking there weren't. Now, as I'm reflecting on it, it seems like it was fine to me. I never really got bored. There was just one point about 2/3 of the way through where I was like, okay, I've seen multiple, like, driving scenes and walking scenes.
There is a lot of driving scenes.
Yeah.
Definitely, which
just
is interesting.
Like, camera on the car and relishing in your hair in the wind, driving in your fancy car
Which,
in the 60s,
come to think of it,
70s.
they did a great job with those shots. For some reason I noticed them, probably because there's so many of them in this movie, but just how they shot those car scenes and driving alongside, like, I don't know if it had a different feel than other car shots in movies, or maybe other movies don't do it as much, but
yeah, I think it was just that there were so many.
It just made me think about, like, wow, this actually looks really good, and they're very well done. And I don't know if it's car fetishization or if it has, like, a meaning that tied into the themes of the movie or what. I'd have to watch it a few more times to really dive in. But yeah, there are a lot of driving scenes. Be prepped for that. Any other just side characters that you enjoyed? Because the rest are really just side characters beyond those three. More or less. Like, it's equal throughout, but it's a big ensemble.
I guess the only other side character that I remember was the little girl actor.
Yeah, she was really good.
I really enjoyed that character. She was really sweet, and I think that scene with Leo is probably the most memorable part of the movie for me.
And at first, that scene, I was a little cynical for just like, oh, it's so obvious. But it's like, you know what? But it works. This is perfect for the theme. It's perfect for the movie.
That was the point.
And I know, exactly. And I usually hate, but that was just a quick feeling that I had. But then I was just like, but that's the point, and it's beautiful, and it works really well. And I usually hate when other people write online about just like, well, that was obvious, or it was like, oh, that was clear, like that Game of Thrones thing in the last season where there were the wings behind Daenerys. So many people got mad about that, just like, oh, it's so obvious. It's like, yeah, but it was cool and it fit well with what was going on. Like, who cares? Like, let the art.
Yeah, if it works, it works.
But yeah, great scene. I'm trying to think of my favorite scene in the movie. It's hard to say. I've really got to see it again. But what else do we have to dive into?
Well, we touched briefly on violence in Tarantino movies,
How
which
you steeled yourself for it.
Yeah, that's always why I'm a little bit wary, and I wouldn't necessarily say that it feels gratuitous to me in most of Tarantino's movies.
No.
Like, I think he does it in a way where it's part of the plot and it makes sense the way that it happens. I always steel myself for it a little bit because I'm not the hugest fan in the world of seeing people dying every second, but
Yeah.
This one didn't have a whole ton of violence. It kind of feels like one of the least violent Tarantino movies. At least in my brain right now, but that's probably because the other ones I'm thinking of are The Hateful Eight and Django Unchained.
Yeah, which are definitely
very heavy.
I'd say that his last three movies are definitely the most violent in his. I'm not sure what I think Django Unchained is possibly the bloodiest.
Yeah, it's hard to say. But I was glad that, I mean, there's one violent scene in this movie, and it's right at the very end.
Two.
Well, yeah,
Two and
two,
a half.
two, I suppose. But
Yeah.
the other ones they feel fairly quick, and they feel like they make sense to me.
Somebody order some fried sauerkraut? That one too. But,
The second I saw the dog for the first time,
Yes.
I was terrified that the dog was going to die.
which Brandy is a good girl. She's the best girl. Best movie dog of the year.
She's
hands
adorable. Love that dog. And I was so scared that she was going to get shot. I was terrified. The dog makes it. Spoiler alert. We already mentioned there would be spoilers.
down. The
but
dog makes it to great effect.
Yes.
You know, very effective pup.
yes.
That Cliff Booth
Yep. The
has.
dog doesn't only survive, the dog is
It
instrumental
thrives.
to the survival of others.
Mm-hmm.
But you even said, like, you would have been upset too if the dog
and
had died.
usually I don't care when animals die in movies, even if they're dogs or cats. It's like, well, it's usually a symbol, whatever. I'll just go along with the story. Plus, it's not a real goddamn dog or cat. So there's also that to take
still
into
hurts.
account. They're not killing animals. But this one was so cool and such a good girl that if anything happened to it, I would have been pretty mad. It takes some punches, but it gave no fucks when it was chewing text to death.
I love
at the
that
end there.
dog.
Yeah,
Such
that
a good
dog's
dog.
amazing.
And the fact that, I mean, that there's that violent scene at the end. I mean, Leo comes out with a flamethrower.
Yes.
But it worked, and I wasn't
Yeah.
horrified.
Yeah.
Because it felt warranted. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just, I think Tarantino movies are often very violent,
Well,
and
he always taps into the revenge, though. That's always his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows how to get us on the side of the characters and to make us hate the people that they're against. I mean, revenge is his thing. So he's going to satisfy us with some great vengeance.
And I think it's interesting that you brought up that interview where he said violence is fun,
Yeah.
because right before the Charles Manson crew is about to go and try and kill everyone, one of them has this trippy conversation where she talks about how movies have so much violence, and she's like, let's go kill the people that made us killers.
Yeah.
Now that you bring up that interview, that sounds
Yeah,
very meta.
yeah. No, and I thought that for a brief second. I mean, I was absorbing the movie, but that flashed through my head too during that part. And I think that may have actually been some sort of thoughts of the actual Manson family to some extent. I could be wrong. Either way, it sounds a lot like an actual train of thought that would have happened from what I do know about the Manson family. But yeah, there's a lot of meta in this movie when you look at it. There's the meta with that violence part. And ultimately, you've got to be, when it comes to violence in film, with whether that's Tarantino, whether that's A Clockwork Orange, whether that's Back to Psycho with Hitchcock, I mean, all these directors have been confronted and blamed for violence in society with their movies. But obviously, at least it's obvious to me, it takes you've got to be sick in the head first if that inspires you. Like, you already want to do that stuff or have done that stuff. The movie isn't making you do that stuff. And the same goes for this.
Yeah. I mean, I
And any of Tarantino's work.
appreciate that this was one of the less violent Tarantino movies, and I appreciate that overall it had kind of a happy ending. That I feel like almost a true happy ending. Almost a true happy ending. And I feel like Tarantino doesn't do that a whole lot, and I appreciate that.
I mean, Django Unchained is pretty happy. I mean, but there is a lot of bloodshed.
Yeah, I mean...
I see what you mean.
It has a happy-ish ending, but it's bittersweet.
Well, and Inglourious Bastard. Well, even those. But yeah, this probably is the happiest ending. But the movie that I do want to bring up is Jackie Brown. This movie is the most like his 1997 movie, Jackie Brown. It's the most mature movie that he's had since 1997's Jackie Brown. And I told you when we walked out that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the second movie that actually has living, breathing human beings populating it. The second movie that he's made. The first one being Jackie Brown. That was a movie that I could actually see the characters living their lives outside of the frame and outside of the 2.5 hours that I spend with them.
Existing in
Like,
the world.
I could get a Christmas card from Jackie Brown and Max Cherry from that movie. I could be walking through my neighborhood and see Cliff Booth hanging out in an above ground pool or something. They feel like real people. We could live next door to them. Saying that about any other of the 7 Tarantino movies besides Jackie Brown Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you're kidding yourself if you think that those characters are really real people. They're fun, they're great characters, I'm not saying that, but they only really work in the world of literature or in the world of film. That's not to downgrade them at all, because they're fantastic. Love Tarantino characters. But these just felt really real, and I appreciated that. I liked the ending. I wasn't sure if Tarantino was going to do a historical revision thing like he did in Inglourious Basterds or Django, or if he was just going to go with the actual result of the Tate murders, which were obviously that Sharon Tate and everybody else in that house died. And I wasn't positive what he was going to do, but I was happy that it ended the way that it did. That was still satisfying. And it didn't feel offensive to me either, because that's something, there's a whole hubbub over Inglourious Basterds. Django Unchained was controversial with that ending, changing the history. I haven't seen, I've been trying to avoid reading about this at all so far, but it didn't feel offensive to me, or possibly offensive. Are there grounds for offense with this ending change?
I didn't feel offended in any way. I kind of appreciate that history was revised because it made the ending more happy. So as somebody who enjoys that, I kind of appreciate it in that way. I also just enjoyed watching the ending unfold because Brad Pitt is essentially tripping on LSD and yet still is like a boss, like just badass. It was funny. And I mean, when Leo comes out with his flamethrower, like all of that violence should not have worked as well as I think it did.
Yeah, which is super interesting to me. And again, just getting to the meta-ness of this movie, some people are already calling this his midlife crisis movie, basically, which kind of makes sense. He's in his mid-50s now. And again, bringing back to Jackie Brown was also about middle age and those themes. He was 33 when he made that movie, and that movie's really rich with similar themes. And this movie is coming back to those themes when he's actually in middle age, which is pretty interesting. Because Tarantino's having a lot of the same reckoning of here's what I've done, how am I going to proceed, how am I going to twist things up a little and change things. Am I a has-been? Am I not a has-been? Do I still got it? Can I still do some things that I really like to do, or should I move in this new direction? He's going through all the same stuff that Rick Dalton is. And it's just a very mature side of him that we really haven't seen for quite some time.
I appreciate too that, like, I definitely got that message, like that middle-age transition message, but sometimes when that is a key message in a story, it can feel real hokey, especially for those of us that haven't encountered middle age yet. It just feels a little bit goofy. This did not feel goofy. It felt very sincere and meaningful. I've read books where it's like the character's very obviously going through a midlife crisis, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But this does not. I empathize with this. They feel real. Their fears feel warranted. I feel for the characters, and I want them to be happy.
In a weird way, this is really just R-rated Toy Story 4. in a lot of ways, like there's a lot of carryover between what Woody's going through and what Rick Dalton's going through.
I'm trying to connect those dots in my head.
Well, I mean,
I was nodding for a second, and then I was like, wait, what?
Well, it's the same kind of deal.
I see what you're saying,
Woody's dwelling on his past and trying to recreate it and trying to hold on to it so much, and he's afraid of evolving what his next direction is. And Rick Dalton, another cowboy, is just experiencing the same thing.
Those cowboys in their midlife crises.
Those cowboys in their crises.
Can't ride horses no more.
No, but yeah. I mean, just talking about this even more, it's making me like it even more. And like all Tarantino movies, I want to see it again right away. Might even see it tomorrow again.
So where does this rank for you then?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I prepped for this about 2 weeks ago by rewatching every single movie that he has directed and written, which was a beautiful experience, as I don't think I'd touched a movie of his for about 4 years, honestly. Or some of them I hadn't touched at least in 4 years. Pulp Fiction I hadn't touched in maybe 5, and that's one of my all-time favorites. You know, again, super hot take, 20-something really loves Pulp Fiction, or anybody, you know. But so I do have a recent ranking, and my top 3 have always been pretty solidly Pulp Fiction, Django, Inglourious, and then I think recently Jackie Brown got to 4th, and Hateful Eight might have been 5. But and it's hard to say because I really want to see this again, but I could see this might knock down Hateful Eight. I could see that. It could round into the top 5 Tarantino's for me. Because again, I'm having so much fun just hanging out with these characters in my head and thinking about them. Where does it rank for you? I don't think you've seen all of his yet, but where does it rank for? You've seen most. So what? Have you
Yeah, I
seen?
haven't seen all of his movies.
Well, you've still got half to see, right? You need to see Kill Bill, which I'll just count both movies as one because Tarantino does. Jackie Brown and Death Proof, I believe, are the ones you.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those.
And maybe Res Dogs.
The ones that I have seen that I always remember very vividly are The Hateful Eight and Django Unchained. And maybe because it's a pretty visual experience, given everything that happens in both of those movies, it's hard to erase some of those images from my mind.
Black Dude's Dingus.
What?
Black Dude's Dingus.
I mean, various things. But those two are the ones that I remember the most, and I do think those are really strong movies. I think I might like this one better, just because...
Better than Pulp Fiction, even, too?
I'm actually not a huge Pulp Fiction fan. Hot take, I guess. I mean, not as much as the other ones.
Interesting.
It's fine, but I would watch Django or Hateful Eight before I would watch Pulp Fiction.
When did I show you Pulp Fiction?
I don't know. Sometime within the 5 years we've been together.
Yeah. As Pulp Fiction, I feel like you got to see late teens. That might be one where that's like the door where you can super duper love it. Like you're gonna love it if you see it in your late teens, or the percentage jacks up much higher.
Could be. And
that's neither bad nor good here nor there, but I think that some movies have doorways where if you miss it, there's less of a chance.
I know what you mean.
And that's one of them. Not that you have to like it as much, but blah blah blah. But you like it better than. So this might be your favorite Tarantino, is what I'm hearing from what you're saying.
This might be my favorite Tarantino.
Okay.
If he had killed the dog, it would be my least favorite Tarantino.
Well, that dog is very cool.
The dog lives on, so I really liked it. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, really would love to see it again. I'm trying to think there's any last minute stuff to talk about. I mean, there's probably so much to talk about. I will say that the Manson family history was well researched, based on everything that I've read and listened to about the Manson family. That was down to a T. Obviously, the filmic references were down to a T. There's all these little Easter eggs. I noticed quite a few throughout, but I'm sure there's, as usual, Tarantino, a ton that I didn't notice.
It was subtle, too. I worried when I kind of remembered that this movie also had that Charles Manson thing, that they would be kind of warring storylines. But it was subtle enough, and it fit in nice enough that I didn't have a problem with it at all. I thought it flowed well and fit in nicely to the puzzle that was this movie.
Yeah, it was definitely organic.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. So, grade for you. What do we got?
When we immediately left the theater, I thought I was going to give it an A- just because of the multiple moments where it kind of got a little bit slower, like the pace slowed down just a little bit with all the car scenes and people coming and going and just kind of relishing in those scenes. But as we've been reflecting on it, that doesn't really bother me much.
Yeah, feature, not a bug.
Yeah, it's almost like a nice little breather when you transition from different things.
Again, there's something to be said for just living with these characters, sitting with them. You don't get a chance for that in a lot of movies.
Well, and normally I wouldn't care about that as much, but I really liked these characters, so I was okay sitting with them a little bit more. I have a thing where character-driven movies versus plot-driven movies generally are not my favorite. I usually prefer like a really good storyline. This, I think, was more character-driven, but it still had a really good story, so I really liked that, and I was okay sitting with those characters a little bit longer. After just talking about it, I think I'm going to give this one a solid A.
Nice. Very nice. I am very, 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 very close to an A, but it's one of those that I just want to see again because, again, Tarantino, as a critic, I want to try to remove bias as much as I can, try to look at it for what it is as much as possible. And I definitely have a Tarantino bias, so I don't want to be the guy who automatically jumps to, oh, that's an A, that's wonderful. I'm trying to be more wary of that throughout because I definitely jockey for certain directors and certain music artists and certain authors, and I want to try to be a little bit more critical about it. So I'm at a very, very, very high A minus, like a 93.7% right now, technically.
You might bump up the grade if the movie asks nice enough.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. If it flashes me a smile next time and gives me a wink.
You just have to look at Leo's beautiful face, and that will be your smile and wink. He does wink. He totally winks in this movie, too. There you go. You got your smile and your wink.
That's true. He does. He does a couple times in the Red Apple tobacco commercial.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely my favorite movie of the year so far.
We were talking before we went to see it that there hasn't really been a great movie
There
yet
hasn't been
this
an
year.
A level yet for
like
me.
a really memorable one.
There hasn't even been an A minus level up until now. There's just been B pluses. Lots of B pluses, but no A levels until right now. Wait, even Toy Story 4 wasn't memorable enough for you?
I mean, it was, but it wasn't the best
Do you like
animated
this
movie
better
I've
than
ever
Toy
seen.
Story 4? Is this top for you right now of the year
It might be.
so far?
Yeah, it might be.
With Toy Story 4 pretty close behind.
Toy Story 4 definitely is up there. I'm pretty sure I gave Toy Story 4 an A.
You did.
Yeah.
That's why I'm grilling you.
I appreciated Toy Story 4. I really liked it. I'm a fan of animated movies and stories, but it wasn't the most original thing that Disney has ever done. This was fun. I enjoyed it, and it was original. Mm-hmm. So this is probably higher for me than Toy Story 4.
Yeah. No, it's definitely my top so far right now that we're a little halfway over the year. Still a few that I'm anticipating, very highly anticipating, but this was at the top of my list. So now we've got the next one from the director of The Babadook that I want to see, which you actually might be able to see as well, because I think it's just a period piece as opposed to a horror one this time. I'm pretty sure.
If it's anything like The Babadook, I can't see it, because I will never sleep again.
And then The Irishman is coming out, which is the new Scorsese one, which will be on Netflix. Star Wars, obviously.
Frozen 2.
Frozen 2 is not in my top 3 most anticipated coming up, but I will no doubt have to end up seeing it.
You will. Spoiler alert for the podcasts.
So either way, safe to say, everybody listening should go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and probably see it twice. I know that I want to see it twice already, if not more than that.
Thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to follow us on Letterboxd. Please feel free to like this video, comment, and let us know if you agree or disagree with us, what you thought of this movie, and feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more movie podcasts. Our next episode
We don't offer podcasts.
not podcasts, but that sounds fun. Can we do that?
If you want to go find stray cats to somehow pod off to people, whatever that means, go ahead.
No, the cats would lead a podcast. It would just be meowing straight for 40 minutes.
I'm sure
There probably is.
there's a demographic out there for that.
There's probably like a cat ASMR.
I was just going to say frickin' ASMR.
Google it and let us know in the comments if that's a thing that exists.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
But anyway, our next episode will be a plebe pick, one of my own picks. But until then, happy viewing.